It's a beautiful sunshiny day on April 12th, 2011. It belies the weather we had 24 and 48 hours ago, and we had lots of nasty storms going through here. We're at 7164C, Route 9, north of Plattsburgh, at Total Computer Supplies, Equipment, Accessories, Recycling, Fixing, Repairs, and so on. And a guy by the name of Jay Letts, whom you'll meet in a few minutes, has been here for 12 years doing this, and all of a sudden he's getting a little attention with a new law that came around in New York State on April 1st about recycling. So we'll talk a lot to Jay about his background in Plattsburgh, why he chose to stay here, and why he takes all your computer supplies and accessories and television sets and cell phones and batteries and so on and so on. So let's go on the inside. Mr. Jay Letts, how are you, my friend?
I'm fine, Gordy. Thank you.
It's amazing. All of a sudden, the man's on television, he's in the newspapers, he's in magazines. You've been here for 12 years. Where have those people been all this time?
Well, that's a good question, but as we all know, getting the word out in the North Country can be a daunting task.
Sometimes it takes a new law in New York State to turn the page, huh?
It certainly does. And as you know, as of April 1st, New York became the 22nd e-waste state in the United States.
Yeah, the 22nd.
Mm-hmm. And they have a whole schedule of timings in regards to when certain things should happen. It has basically organized, or has begun to organize, the...
That's all right.
No, that's all right. We'll let this
Yeah,
one
go
sit.
ahead.
It basically has organized the electronic recycling operation. I guess that's the best way to put it. Before this, it was unregulated, and now it is regulated.
Well, you know, I have to confess that I knew who you were, and you certainly knew who I was, another fat guy in the North Country. But we had never met until a couple of weeks ago, and we're doing this in April of 2011. And somebody was over at my house jiggling around with the computers and saying, "You got to go meet Jay." He saw that I had punched my thumb through a space bar on my laptop, and he said, "You know, Jay can he can order you a new keyboard and put a new one on there." And so I came down here with my son Dale. We chatted and discovered you. And I'm embarrassed to say that because I'm supposed to be in the loop. But the loop didn't extend to your place down here.
Well, I would think that, one, I'm a little unhappy about that because it is very expensive, one, to advertise, and we've done a lot of advertising in regards to not only computer repair, but also computer recycling. That has been on our poster, and if you take a look up there,
way up in the corner, I see Total Computer Supplies.
This is
repairs.
Yeah, well, this is the basic message that I've tried to put across to the North Country for 12 years. That things that they want repaired, we're at least willing to try to repair them.
You know, when people are watching this program on television or on the internet at Plattsburgh.com or HometownCableNetwork.com right now saying, "Hey, Maud, I know where we can take that old computer. Get it out of the room back there. Take it down there." And so maybe this is the beginning of a whole new chapter in your life down here. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I'm hoping that it will improve upon what I've already built upon.
Well,
And that certainly for this area. I'm very concerned with the environment. That's one of the reasons why we began recycling 12 years ago, was to make sure that it does not go to our landfill and that it stays out of the waste stream.
you know, that's probably the most important message we can impart
I couldn't agree more.
today.
I think people take for granted think of all the little batteries you have in your life, whether it's your MP3 player or it came out of your telephone or your remote control for your TV. Everybody's got all these little batteries, and yet each and every one of those batteries is a time bomb waiting to go off in the landfill. So it has really become, in my mind, an extremely important thing for us to recycle those batteries and keep them out of our landfills.
You know, I shouldn't say that people don't know about you because you've got stacks and stacks of computers. And I've never been in there in the last few weeks when you didn't have 5 or 6 people waiting to bring something in or to get something fixed. Including right now. So let's pause for a minute.
Let's see where we're.
I told you, customers come. You got to stop the camera for a minute. You can't turn away good jobs. You know that? Yeah, we were talking about how important recycling is because a lot of stuff does end up in the landfill, and that's sad because it's dangerous.
Absolutely. It's not only sad, and it's interesting that you brought up the notion of it being dangerous. It's poisonous.
Yeah.
And when we start looking at electronics, all of our electronics have the ability to leach into the soil if they get wet and they're allowed to be left outside. You can get mercury, you can have acids that leak in. There's numerous other chemicals that make the earth literally dead earth. And that's where reuse and the importance of the new law really come together. I think this is one where the consumer wins.
I think many of our viewers probably didn't know what you just said beforehand. They see a battery and it runs out, so they throw it in the garbage can.
It's the most common thing in the world to do, and yet they're like little time bombs just waiting to go off.
And this is true of every computer, every television set, every cell phone.
Yep, that's true.
And there are other things inside computers and TVs that are dangerous besides the batteries.
Absolutely. And that's why they need to be handled in a responsible manner.
You know, are you a Plattsburgher? Were you born around here?
No, I was born just outside of Albany, but I've been here, and I proudly say, since 1975.
Oh, you're a native.
That's what everybody says.
You're a native.
It takes more than 20 years, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've been here since '61. Calvin's been here all his life in the northern tier. It's not a bad place to live and work and raise families.
I love it here.
Yeah. You, when you were a young guy, what did you think you might want to do as you grew older? I know you've done quite a few things already.
I have. At one point, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and it's funny how that kind of walks with you in life wherever you go.
Well, you're teaching now.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is, at the end of the day, how do you feel about what you've done?
Yeah. So we look at it. So what have you done? I know you worked at the college for how long?
Oh, I worked at the college for a little over 10 years.
Did you really?
Yeah. I also worked for General Electric for about 5 years as I worked for the large steam turbine and generating plant.
Come on.
No, that was rather interesting work. That was down in Schenectady, New York.
Yeah, that was. Well, that's how you get your education, moving from town to town, place to place.
Well, a little bit, and also a lot which is, I have to say, Plattsburgh did the very best job. I went to college to learn how to learn, and they didn't fail me. So
that's what I tell people too.
And when people have other expectations of education, I sit there and say, if you are able to read and you're able to understand and then go one step further, I think you've really got something. And I don't mean that in any ill respect at all. I think now we're talking about you can teach yourself anything.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's what this little television show called Our Little Corner accomplishes. Teaching people that people like Jay Letts exist, that there is a law for recycling, but you should have been doing it for years, folks.
I don't think we ought to look back with regret. I think we ought to talk about today being the first day.
Isn't that wonderful? Of the rest of your life.
Well, whether it's the rest of your life or, let's say, the rest of your recycling life.
Yeah. So let's go back in time, 12 years, and tell people how you decided to get into this business in the first place.
Well, like looking for a job in the North Country is now, there was very little difference in looking for a job then. At 45 years old and looking around Plattsburgh, there was not a lot of opportunity. So I really basically took what was my hobby and things that I had had some training into and combined them into a business, and that's how Total Computer Supplies was born. I couldn't find anybody else to pay me.
Aha. So you love computers right from the very beginning?
Right when they came out. I was one of the first ones. My wife and I then bought one of the Tandy 1000s, and I believe...
Did you really?
Yeah, no hard drive, and just all of it was on a floppy disk. That was back around 1978.
No kidding.
No kidding. And then, of course, I saw and was involved with one of the first Commodore 64s. And that wasn't good enough. Right after the Commodore 64 came out, Pentium 1 came out, and I had to have one of those.
Oh, my goodness.
So, I mean, once you get
that
bitten...
was so exciting when it happened, and look how far we've come since then.
That's it. And once you get bitten, really, what I say by the information bug, it's not the computer bug. It's the fact that there's always new and more information to learn. Once you get bitten by that, you don't stop. And I haven't stopped since then.
We should tell people where this is. What is it, 1764C?
7164C, Route 9, Plattsburgh, New York. Easiest way to remember us is we're right across the street from the A&W and Dunkin' Donuts on Route 9.
Wasn't there a very popular gas station right across the road here?
Absolutely, the old Hess gas station.
Isn't Calvin mentioned that when he drove in this morning?
And also, as we can all notice, the Empire Trailer Park is gone.
And the North Country Shopping Center
It's gone.
But you know, you could be on the cusp here, and you and I discussed that without the camera last time I was here. There are people who hope and dream and plan for huge developments there in that space that was the North Country Shopping Center.
Oh, and I don't think it's just limited to that. I think they're looking at the whole north end of town. What's funny, though, is when you consider that there's only 4 ends of town, they'd have to come here, you would think, sooner or later. But they've managed to elude us all the way to 2010. We're still very undeveloped on this end of town.
You know, strangely enough, long before you came to town, there was a plan to develop north of the city of Plattsburgh. I mean, urban renewal was heading in this direction. And certain things like the mud flats and the Plattsburgh city dump and other things were out toward this end of town, and they decided, well, maybe we ought to turn the compass and go west. So that's where the big development happened. And look at, they're almost to my house in Morrisonville.
Oh, I know. And they've run out of room. I mean, really, when we look at it, we can't go any further south, we can't go any further east, and we can't go any further west. What's left?
We took a windshield tour. When was that, last summer? Yes, a year or so ago with Bernie Bassett, the supervisor for the town of Plattsburgh, and we came out here. We parked the car next to the beautiful theaters up there in the other end, north end of what was the North Country Shopping Center. And, you know, we felt like the original pioneers with these sweeping hand motions and, you know, things that they hope and dream. And you're right, it'll happen. It has to happen in this direction.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be good for all of us when it does.
Yeah. So, did you start out originally expecting to accept recycling?
Yes. When I opened the company was opened, we remanufactured laser cartridges. We immediately began recycling in the very beginning. This is 1999. And we also started doing some computer repair, mainly because with computer repair, people need to get to know you, it seems, before they're willing to trust you with their equipment. And that's always a good thing. You should have
that. If you do a good job, they'll love you forever.
Absolutely. But, you know, I mean, that's really part of the relationship that you should have with someone that's a technician.
So what'd you do? Did you lease the space at first, or did you buy it, or how did that?
I rented. And then after I rented, basically I rented for 3 years, and then I bought the place.
Aha.
I figured that this was where I wanted to be.
By way of further defining where you are, there's a huge building behind you here.
Which was originally Partners Saloon.
Yeah.
It's now owned by the Titherington family.
Yeah. And
has been rented out for several years as several different types of bars. Bars and restaurants, I should say. Wherever you have a bar now, you need to serve food too.
So what now? Do you have more? You have more than one building here as part of your stuff.
Right. I have basically 3.
And the last time I was here, you took me out front because you're building a deli.
Eventually. It is a dream of mine that I hope to see become a reality.
There's a Florida furnace in it. That
Soon.
can't be all bad.
Oh, there's a lot of things that are going on, but like everything else, it's very expensive. But I would like to see that too. I think this end of town, a deli would do very well.
It seemed to me like I remembered a sub shop out there years and years.
As Ice
years
Cream
ago.
Land.
Oh, is that what it was?
That's what it was.
I don't know. Maybe.
And
I
before
stopped in there.
before that, Gus's Grocery.
Oh gosh! Now you're really dating me. Okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha. So you started in one building?
Yeah, pretty much we've always been in here. We moved up front for a very short time, and it's just too small. It's too small a space. We with what we do need more room. So that's
You know, like I said, you got stacks and stacks of laptops and desktops, and you put monitors in a different. I notice you're like some days you're like a traffic director out there, like a cop blowing the whistle, saying, "No, take it over there and put it in that truck."
absolutely, which is great. It's like a cooperative. All of us working together for the same goal. I happen to, the way we do it now, everything that's glass goes in the right trailer, and everything that's not goes in the left.
Is that the way it works?
That is just
That's
the rule.
easy enough, even for me, this left-handed genius here, to remember. Okay. So there are a lot of ins and outs to this recycling business, not to mention the repair stuff that people do not know, and I want to get into that. What does the new law require?
Well, first of all, the new law puts the responsibility for the OEM manufacturers to become involved with recycling and to own up to their share, which is figured and calculated by powers far beyond me.
Yeah.
But what they say is this: if you're an OEM manufacturer, then when you come in to buy a new product, you need to accept an old product in return. The way the law reads, it does. Let's say I bought a Sony. I'm just saying that it could be any brand. And I walked in and I wanted to buy a Toshiba. Well, I could buy that Toshiba and turn in the Sony and no one could say anything. The one thing that the buyer should beware is what are called premium services. When you recycle a computer, one of the premium services that would be offered by Best Buy or by other ones is set up so that, say you wanted your hard drive wiped. Well, that's one of the things that we do is we offer it all for free. There are no premium services. We consider it all a premium.
Oh, really? But you told me that you have to wipe the hard drives.
At first, New York, the law has been defined now. And when you and I had talked, at first New York wanted to put the responsibility on the recyclers, which I think is perfectly fine. It does require more time, but at least we know we got the job done. On the other hand, the way the law reads is the individual or the corporation is responsible for their own data unless they're willing to pay for the premium service. One leads to the other, doesn't it? So you kind of then can see how you can hire people to do exactly what I'm willing to do for free, but you can hire people to do it, and that it is a service that a person can get.
So right from the beginning, you were accepting just about everything for recycling.
Absolutely, as far as electronic.
Yeah.
We've always been very specific that way. The latest, biggest branch out that we moved into was TVs. For the longest time, I couldn't find anybody who would take a TV from me at all. I mean, I'm talking about on all levels.
No kidding.
I'm not talking about the dumps, but the recyclers who are actually going to break it down to the smallest component have told me forever that there is nothing to recover, no money to be made, and that TVs were of the worst quality material. Now, what's changed? The OEM companies now are forced to take back the old TVs, which, believe it or not, gives them value. Because they want them, they've created a market. Literally.
you've always had to charge people for that reason to bring their TVs here, right?
Right. Well, one, I was told by New York State sales tax that TVs were considered waste, not recyclable, and that because they were considered waste, I needed to charge and pay them sales tax. Didn't make a lot of sense to me, but at the same time, you don't argue with the state.
So you took a lot of TVs that way?
Not a great many. I was fortunate because, one, just the other day, our county landfill and Casella announced that they were taking televisions and electronics for free as of April 1st. This is wonderful, and I congratulate them for doing that. I also am telling all of my customers, because I still don't know anybody that really wants a TV. I got to be honest with you.
You're absolutely
right.
right.
I would just as soon they take their TV somewhere else. I'll take them, and we'll deal with them. That's not a problem. But Casella is embracing them. And I say as long as, that's another interesting aspect to the law, which we should talk about, is the fact that as of 2015, the county landfill, as well as anyone involved with the county landfill, will not be allowed to work with electronics. They will not be allowed to recycle electronics anymore. There will be no electronics in the landfill whatsoever as of 2015. That's the law, January 1st.
Was that part of this new April 1st law?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Well, they don't always give you the whole story. They don't always tell you when things kick in. Like one of the things that kicks in is no consumer as of 2015, and that means all of us, can knowingly put an electronic in the landfill without it being a penalty. And I don't know if they're talking about it being a misdemeanor or a felony, or you're going to get a fine like you were littering. I have no idea. All I can tell you is it's in the law that an individual that does that has broken the law.
There are laws and there are laws, and some laws are strictly enforced while others are not. So we just don't know what the future of that law might be.
Oh no, when it comes to DEC, they have a long, very long history of not only enforcing environmental laws, but making sure that it's done properly if they're involved. And right now, they're as involved as they can get. They're right at the top. They set the rule, they do everything that has to be done with it as they work out with not only the OEM companies, but individual companies like mine, and how to handle the waste and what's appropriate downstream and where it should go and what we can do with it and what they expect, such as the 20% rule. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet that we're talking about right now is 20% of the product that's recovered is meant to be reused. So,
No kidding.
right.
That's
So the
20%.
goal of the entire project is to immediately remove and return 20% of everything that's brought in.
You know, it's amazing because I'm older than anybody, maybe everybody in this building, and maybe within a half a mile radius. But we invented recycling when I was a little boy because, you had to use and reuse. And that's why I got my brother's hand-me-down knickers that I cut the rubber bands off with my jackknife so they didn't hurt my legs when I was a little kid. And that's why your father could fix anything. That's why people learned to repair clocks and radios and long before televisions, but you used and reused until you wore it out. And your mother would make a blanket or something out of your old socks.
Well, in a way, that's exactly what's happening now. I mean, not quite as simply as you put it out, but in the end, if we recover the same gold, which is, by the way, industrial gold, it's not considered jewelry gold, but if we consider that same gold and use it over and over again, we've done the same thing as what you did with your knickers.
Isn't
And,
that
and,
cool?
and they take that through the whole thing. Plastics in computers and computer components is extremely high grade and can be made into many different things.
And it doesn't break down very quickly in a landfill either.
I couldn't agree more, and that's another reason why we want that stuff removed from there, that it's not a good product for a landfill or for a solid waste landfill, one that we're hoping, I believe, someday to reclaim and reuse.
Life is so different than it was when I was a little boy. But some of the same values that we learned back then are just as important today. And I hope we make that point when we talk about recycling here today. What if a person watching this wants to bring a computer or any related accessories, battery operated cell phones or whatever to you? Is there a process or procedure?
The only procedure would be to come during our normal working hours,
Which is?
Monday to Friday, 8 to 12 and 1 to 4 p.m. Simply come and we'll be more than happy to help you put it on the truck or put it on the truck for you, whatever you need.
People might say, looking around here, wow, you got stuff everywhere. That's why I love this place. It makes me feel at home. But you got stuff coming in and going out every day of the week,
We
right?
do, and just about everything you see here is in one form or another being processed, either for reclamation, or we're going to separate it for certain components, or we're going to reuse the parts. So it's an ongoing changing affair every day.
You know what? Things flash into my mind because I have a very strange but vivid imagination. When I was a young guy, we were always involved in cars. I know you like cars. When I was a young guy, there was a junkyard on every corner in the country. And you bought an old junk out of there and you rebuilt it and you scrounged around and took your own parts off a car. And the guy in the junkyard would say, "You got a wrench? You take that carburetor off of that vehicle, $2, please." And we recycled car parts like crazy back in the day.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're doing essentially here. Now there are no more junkyards. We don't, except for nuts like me, most people don't buy the old cars, and they're gone. And they're crushed, and after a while they're about this big when they were a lot bigger than that before. But we're talking recycling.
Absolutely. I think the difference is not only the size and commodity of it, but the fact that then there was an organization of people who were interested in it. We're seeing the same thing today. That a lot of people are coming forward that have been recycling for years, are great. They're happy to find out about what we do here, and they also do a great deal to promote what we do here. Certainly, I can't thank you enough for your involvement too.
Well, it was interesting to me from the moment I walked in the door, because I knew your name, but you and I had never formally shaken hands. But it's nice to know that somebody out there cares and that they can speak in sentences, and because a lot of people can't articulate what they're passionate about. You not only love what you do, and that's obvious. You love to meet people. You've developed a large cadre of friends in the North Country over the years. But you're doing something that's good for humanity.
Well, Gordy, thank you.
Well,
I've been
really.
very fortunate, certainly fortunate with the people that I've gotten to know in the North Country, fortunate with my company and the fact that we're still in business and still going strong, and also feeling fortunate that we passed these new laws to protect us so that in the future our children and our children's children will live in a better earth than the one we do now.
How long did you know this law was brewing? Did you know about it a long time ago?
Well, yeah, it's been mentioned several times. As a matter of fact, I can recall it being spoken about in the year 2000, so we're talking 11
Really?
years. Oh, yeah. It's been something that they've been considering for a long time, and now through all of the legislation, of course, I'm not a politician, so I can't tell you the process that it took for them to get here, but through everything, they finally hammered out a deal and put it into law, and now it's being implemented.
Is there a market for you for almost all the parts that you take out of these computers?
In one way or another, the answer is yes, but the one thing I want to caution everybody out there that wants to get into what I'm doing is this. It takes volume. And we're talking
I can see that. All
we're
I gotta
talking
do is look
about
around from one room
we're
to the
talking
other.
about a lot of volume. This is
Yeah.
not a couple hundred pieces. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces per truck, per month, per year, you get the idea. You start talking about a mountain of material, and people need to realize that it's not a good hobby. I don't recommend it as a hobby.
But now you do it for a living.
Absolutely. And I think Plattsburgh, being the size that it is, can sustain really one or two. I don't even know if we can do two because the county and I are doing it until in 2015, as I said.
Oh, I didn't realize you really don't have any.
There isn't anyone else up
Any
here
competition?
all the way to Queensbury.
Come on.
No, I get material from Ticonderoga, I get material from Champlain, I get material from Malone, the town of, Saranac and Saranac Lake, Lake Placid. All of these places have recycled with me at one time or another, and I think it's wonderful that we're here regionally for them. That's part of the problem, is that if you take the costs that are involved with owning trailers and having personnel being able to work it and things like that, and you don't receive enough material, we all know you're not going to stay in business very long. The other side of the coin is you have to find an equal balance of being able to sustain a small community like we're doing here. Even when we add up all these people, we're not the size of Albany or anything like that. We're a smaller area when we add up all the towns together. And by doing that, being able to regionalize it has been, in my mind, one great way of being able to offer the service and keep it free.
Yeah, I had no idea. I knew you would open this book and go page by page by page, and I always start every interview like this in professing my profound ignorance on the subject. But the idea is to explain it to the North Country so they know. How about, you don't deal with anybody from Canada, do you, or do you?
Well, there were times that I have recycled, not for Canada, but the other way around. In the very early beginning, we used to use a broker in Canada to get rid of some of the material. We're not doing that currently, but that was one of the old ways that it was done. Canada is very much like the United States in that they're following the commodities market.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want to point out to you is whether or not we're talking about cedar or we're talking about computers, we're still talking about commodities. And by doing that, there's always a market and there's always a market price for everything that's a commodity. It might make you work a great deal in order to get that, or maybe you'll do no work at all. But as far as I know, in commodities, like mentioning cedar, I'll bet that if they're selling it raw, that's one way to sell it. But then there's got to be finished and posts and the whole 9 yards that go along with trading in that too. So because of that, that's how the commodity price is set. And then as the market goes up and down, people try to capitalize on it. I simply try to move the product out of Clinton County. That's my goal.
But apparently, when you started doing this, you must have been a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think so too. I think when I started doing it, because there weren't a lot of people that were involved in it, it's been a cottage industry most of the time, but I saw a need for it early. So I agree with you. And I don't, that very first urge and seeing the need, I don't think that's ever passed, Gordy, because I still see it every day. When I get up and I think of whether or not I'm going to take that battery out of my TV remote and just throw it in the trash. And I've learned and taught myself that, oh, no, wait a minute. I've got a little collection barrel that I can put it into, and then I'll eventually move it into the waste stream. And the right thing will be done by it than just the easy thing.
We can hope that this program has an impact in that direction. I mean, I said a few minutes ago, and I have to contend that an awful lot of people out there just aren't taking time to think about recycling the things that you've mentioned here today. But if we can get mom and dad thinking about it, and maybe talking about it around the supper table tonight to their little kids,
that'd be wonderful.
Then maybe we can start a whole new thing. Maybe we can get you teaching a class at the community college. And
I don't know if it takes a class or just wanting to do the right thing. And to me, you can't go wrong as long as you want to do the right thing.
Well, I think we're trying to do the right thing. For those people who just tuned in, we're talking with Jay Letts at Total Computer Supplies and Accessories Incorporated. Repairs computers, laptops, printers, the list goes on and on and on until the voice trails off into the distance. This business has obviously evolved since you first opened the doors. So I said you were ahead of the curve, but there had to be a learning curve for you.
Absolutely.
You don't start out knowing everything.
No, as a matter of fact, in this business, I think every day is a learning curve. I learn something new every day. It's one of the reasons why I love this job.
You aren't just a repair shop. We started out by saying you were a recycling center.
Absolutely.
You have to be licensed for that.
We need to be registered.
Registered.
Yep, and we are registered. We're registered with the state of New York and also the Department of Environmental Conservation as registered electronic recyclers and dismantlers.
If you can remember that, you can remember anything. Okay, so that's the way it works. So give me an idea how the process works. Some guy comes in and brings it 3 or 4 laptops and a couple old towers that he had, and he goes home.
Okay.
What do you do next?
Well, the first thing we always do is remove the hard drives because we don't want to put anything on the truck that has information storage capability.
And that's something all the rest of us laymen are just starting to think about. Yeah, you might have stuff on your computer you don't want the world to know, all your pertinent and vital information.
Well,
and it was only last year that we were watching a television program and learning that now copiers and some printers have their own memory. People are copying stuff in a business, from their own private information, and boom, it's on the hard drive.
I want to play devil's advocate with you, Gordy, because one thing the industry has learned that most people don't put their credit cards or other sensitive information in files on the computer that can be discovered by someone else. They'll use their computer to do a credit card transaction, and when they're doing it, they're no longer in their computer. They've moved into the server, and the information that they put in is not held on their computer in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So I don't want people to get into hysteria about data. Somebody might have pictures that they wouldn't necessarily care if someone else saw, but that's about the kind of data and letters that we've written and things
we hear, of course, the news embellishes some of these stories that we hear, but we hear a lot of, bless you, John, we hear about some company system that was compromised.
And that
had
happens.
a thousand clients had their information compromised.
Absolutely. And whenever
somebody tapes a laptop home that shouldn't.
Well, you mean like if we start thinking of one that involved the armed forces, and that was discovered with 34,000 Social Security numbers.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, these kind of snafus, I think they do happen occasionally, but in the overall sense, I think most people realize that credit card information, expiration dates, and passwords are never a good thing to put into a Word file and save it on your computer. My recommendation is put it in a file in a notepad next to your computer, and then you can look it up. And then that way you only use it when you want to use it. It's not in a file on the computer.
You make me laugh because, of course, my wife is so meticulous about record keeping with the finances. And she has on her desk file after file after file containing all that information you just mentioned.
Absolutely.
And she'll say, "Okay, can you check the bank account?" I'll say, "What's my username? What's my password?" And she has to go and get the file and tell me about it because it's not anywhere on the computer where anybody.
And that actually makes it safer for you. And everyone that does that.
It's a standing joke at our house because she has to go and track it down, and that's now you need passwords for everything.
I think the worst part of it is that the companies have gotten to the point where they won't allow you to use the same password.
Yeah.
So people now have not just one password; they have 10 in their head or more.
Not in my head, baby. I can hardly remember my grandchildren's names. Never mind that. So you tear things apart. You take the hard drive out, and then what?
Well, once we take the hard drive out, we begin assessing. In your case, you had mentioned a laptop. Wrapping up?
Yeah, can you show us what a hard drive? People don't know what a hard drive looks like, right?
Well, a laptop hard drive is...
Okay, show and tell.
It sure is.
What do you got there?
Well, this is a hard drive that's come out of this gateway computer. The first thing either I or one of my technicians would do, if this were brought in for recycling, would be to remove this hard drive. And we're going to take this hard drive and we're going to put it and use another device to eradicate the data. Okay. So that's the first thing we're going to do. One of the other things that we might do...
Well, how do you know if the hard drive works or not?
It doesn't matter whether or not it works. It's your data. So we're talking about something that's been recycled. I'm hoping that it works, and if it does work, then I'll try to reuse it.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's important.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to try to erase the data that's on it.
I see what you mean.
And so our first assault, if you want to say, on a recycled item is anything that has a memory. Anything that's going to be able to store data is the very first thing we deal with. Then after we deal with that, the rest of it is more or less, it's not inert, but it doesn't have less of a value. For me, it's now the beginning of how we're going to separate the parts. One of the things that you see here is the processor for this laptop is under this piece. It's being cooled, air cooled by the fan out here. So we would remove this, remove the processor, remove the RAM, if there were nothing worthy of the laptop to be recovered. A lot of times I'll get in laptops that they need a new processor. So we'll try and put in a new processor and the laptop works like it's brand new. So we wind up reselling it at a greatly reduced value and people are thrilled.
That's important to mention that. So you actually making new ones out of old ones?
Well, it's called refurbished.
Yeah, refurbished.
So we refurbish laptops here. We sell used speakers. We sell used parts.
Now, speakers, that's another thing. You probably get a lot of those.
We do get a lot of speakers. Sometimes, as with anything, and this is why I tell just about everybody that asks me, we need to take time testing, because many times the reason an article is thrown away is because it really is done. It's the end of its life. But certainly other times it's thrown away prematurely and it still can be used more. And so that's what I see is people that want certain speakers.
It's absolutely a good point to make, because there are so many things in a computer and a laptop. They're condensed in a tower, a desktop. They're a bit more accessible, easier, but they're a part for this laptop generally won't fit another manufacturer's laptop, will
That's exactly the manufacturer's reasoning, is that way you can't swap parts and they get to control the market.
Isn't that incredible? But you don't think about that until I get in here and look at the inside here. You never could. So the hard drives, none of the hard drives are interchangeable?
Actually, a hard drive itself is interchangeable. It's the way it's housed.
I see.
How it connects, or the way it's housed in the laptop that makes it unique.
Now, how about external hard drives?
External hard drives are all those hard drives that plug in USB or FireWire into your computer. FireWire, of course, allows the data transfer to be faster.
And so you take those too?
Absolutely. And we wipe those too. We wipe all hard drives. That's just what we do. I mean, to me, if it can hold data and it can be reused again, wonderful. But do I want to help safeguard your data, or do I want to work against you? The answer is no. I want to help safeguard your data, so no matter what comes through here, if it's destined for recycling, it all gets low-level formatted. It all gets wiped.
So you take things apart when you first get them. You take everything apart?
No, actually, as I was saying to you, we begin the process by removing the hard drives.
Yeah.
And the hard drives go through a daily process of being formatted.
Right.
At that point, they can be set off, and we can move into other layers. Now, you're wondering, what are we going to do with a laptop like this? Well, let's say that after we try a change to repair it, that it doesn't appear to be repairable. We're going to remove the screen because the screen is a item that can be reused. So we're going to set the screen off into one of our bins for screens. And,
oh boy.
Yeah, and the other parts that we know that are good on here, such as the CPU fan and the processor, most likely would be saved, so that way it can be available for the next project that we're going to repair. Other than that, the other pieces that are on there, sometimes the battery can be saved. Mostly the batteries can't be saved. I would like everyone to know, because batteries just seem to have about a 3 to 5 year life, and
Oh, is that it?
it just seems to be the nature of a battery. And after it's been used for 5 years, it's pretty used up.
You know, that's a good point to make right here and now. Is there a process with a rechargeable battery and any piece of equipment that you should follow in recharging that'll make it last longer? Should you let it run down every time? Or?
Well, that's called training a battery. And if you let a battery, like in a laptop, run down 3 times in a row, it's called a factory reset. Now, what do I mean by that? Would mean you charge the battery all the way up, then start the laptop up, unplug the AC adapter, and allow it to completely go all the way off, then plugging it in, allowing it to charge itself all the way up. Doing that 3 times in a row is called a factory reset of a battery.
Who would know that? Did you know that, Calvin? I never heard about that in my life. Is that a good thing?
It is a good thing, because it'll wake a tired
I'm
battery.
gonna write a
up.
primer when I go home. No kidding. It'll
Yeah.
wake the battery
In
up?
other words, if it's gotten used, see, you have to remember, batteries kind of get used to the way you use them. If you don't use a battery very often, it doesn't think it needs to have a lot of energy in, because it
Son
does
of a
never
gun.
use it.
Come on.
No, it's true.
Isn't that amazing?
So if you use your battery occasionally, which is what I advise my clients to do, they're at least putting their battery through the motion of being used and knowing that it's still a battery, instead of it really just being part of the electrical conduit that powers your laptop.
Even though it's a laptop, I know a lot of people who never move the laptop from the desk, never
Exactly.
unplug the AC cord.
Exactly.
So, like you said, the poor battery doesn't know it's a
Well,
battery.
it gets
love it.
confused.
Yeah. Well, that's something. See, I told you I got a liberal education just learning that. How about, what's a motherboard?
A motherboard is your complete assembly, which allows you to utilize all facets of your computer. Without the motherboard, it's sort of like the heart and soul of a computer. Without the motherboard, it's not a computer, it's a toaster or whatever it is, but it's not a computer.
So the motherboards to replace with new ones are pretty expensive.
They can be, and the biggest question that I think people should ask themselves, am I spending my money wisely by replacing a motherboard, or should I just buy a new computer? And my answer comes back all the time. If it's 50% of what you paid for the computer to begin with in order to repair it, buy a new computer. Do yourself a favor.
There's so many kinds, so many price ranges, and they change, it seems like, every other Tuesday.
Well, isn't it meant to kind of entice you into it?
Yeah, sure.
Because I know a lot of technology out there that we're exposed to that we're not using. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good or bad. It's the nature of the way Americans buy. We always want bigger, better, best. Well, if we want bigger, better, best, we may not use it, but at least we got it.
You know, you talked about the old Commodores and the original IBMs and the old Apple IICs and all of that stuff. Is there a market for antique computers?
Not really a market. It's still part of the commodities.
Some people collect them.
Well, I think that maybe 30 years from now, probably.
So we're not there yet.
Once we, it's sort of like cars, like you said. People have antique cars, but cars start at 25 years plus.
Yeah.
And we're at about that age. I just don't think my little Tandy 1000 is going to be worth a lot of money right away.
Have you ever gone to any computer schools, or is this all learning by the seat of your pants?
No, I've been to school. I've gone to specialized training for different companies that have employed me. I've done warranty work. So I have formal training as well as what I consider to be everyday training.
Now, you crank out a lot of stuff here. A lot of people recycle. Hopefully will be good for your business in the future. But you don't have a staff of thousands around here. I don't see little people running around here.
No, but I'm very fortunate to have what I have. I'm always looking for talent, though.
So you don't have, how many people have you got working for you? I saw John here. He's the guy that...
John's one of my employees, and Justin is my other employee.
Your two kids.
Well, no, the other one is not my child.
He's not. He just acts that way sometimes, right?
I would not necessarily even be that bold.
So you just got a couple of guys that help you out.
That's correct.
And you're open 6 days or 5 days?
5 days a week, Monday through Friday.
Is there any aspect of this business that we haven't talked about here that we should mention? This is J-Let's, by the way. Total Computer Supplies and Accessories and Repairs on Route 9 north of Plattsburgh. We're on a voyage of discovery here today. We've discovered a lot about you as a person, but also about recycling. And I think there is a very, very important message. And I think that is that people should think about this more often.
Absolutely. It is extremely important, and I'm glad that it's begun.
Well, and something I've learned is that the average person may not know whether his computer, his laptop, his tower, whatever it is repairable or should be thrown on the heap here in your recycling bin.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we are glad to always evaluate whether or not it should be repaired or not.
And you've been here long enough, so you are pretty cognizant of what your reputation is in the community. And you know what word of mouth can do for good or for the other direction.
Well, I've been very fortunate. For 12 years I've been practicing this art, and I hope to be able to continue to do it for quite some time to come.
Yeah, you're not just some guy on the street corner who might not be here next week.
I try not to be.
Especially when you're planning a deli out there, man. I can't wait. Get your computer fixed and get a sub at the same time.
Wouldn't that be something?
Is there any other chapter that we ought to talk about, do you think?
No, I think we've done a very good job.
Yeah.
I think we've done an excellent job.
I really appreciate the fact that you're here and that you have this service for the North Country. If people don't know about this new law, they should at least read it. There's a lot.
It is available.
It is available.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't very many places like you in the North Country.
That's true.
You can take your stuff to the landfill. They're under new obligations now.
They are.
You don't take old refrigerators here.
No, that has to be brought to a Freon technician, and I'm not a Freon technician.
Isn't it amazing? But some things can be recycled and some things can't. But we, when we did a program at the landfill, when I wrote about Casella and the landfill, I was truly amazed at what things can be recycled.
Yes, there's a
lot of stuff you think when it's done, but many times it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And it pleases me to see a sign on something made from recycled paper, for example, right?
Absolutely.
So, you plan on being here for a long time to come?
Well, it's certainly a place that I like to be.
We should mention your telephone number if people want some advice.
561-6885.
And for people who don't live in Clinton County but might be driving through here, what's that address again, Jay?
It's 7164C Route 9, Plattsburgh, New York, 12901.
The growing end of town.
The growing end of town.
Yeah, put that in your GPS and come here and do it. Jay, thanks so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you for having me, Gordy.
Best of luck. Get rich. Let's stop for a minute. Our viewers heard us talking about the two trailers outside J-Let's, and here they are. Glass on the right and
Anything that's not glass on the left.
Well, we're looking in there, and you palletize things. I'm sure some people have no idea what that even means, but you put them on a pallet and encase them in plastic.
Absolutely, shrink wrap them so that they're ready for shipment.
But I see stacks of towers here.
Those towers are towers that have been recycled that we have not had a chance to go through yet. So those towers will be brought inside and processed.
I don't know how you do it with only a couple of guys working with you, and one of them's your kid who can say, "I'm sorry, Dad, I'm not working this afternoon."
I don't know what to tell you. I'm a lucky guy.
I guess you are a lucky guy in many respects. It's all supply and demand and how much money you want to spend on staff. Could you use more people?
I think every small business in America can use more people. I think there isn't any doubt about that. But
it
whether or
requires
not
a special talent too, you know.
Well, I don't think anybody wants a job where they're not needed.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I think it helps determine how much staff you have.
Yeah. So everything that's not glass goes in here.
That's correct.
And how long will it take you to fill this trailer?
Anywhere between 60 and less days.
Come on.
No, we've been averaging that now for about 2 years.
That's pretty good, I would think.
Yeah, one trailer every 2 months.
So where does it go from here?
Well, from here it's going to go downstate to Brooklyn, New York, Jackson Heights, and it's going to be processed at Millennium Resources. Millennium Resources will then, at that point, not only remove all of the items, but they will scrap and use actually domestic smelters in the end of life. Yeah, now he contracts it out in tractor trailer truckload. So when we're talking about computer cases, we're talking about a whole truckload of smashed computer cases that is then moved to a smelter.
Isn't that amazing? Well, let's just step over this way before we go on to another subject. I want people to know that this is the glass side.
Absolutely.
I saw a big old giant screen TV.
There's
inside.
a huge TV inside there. That is part of the OEM Take Back program.
Oh, it is?
It will be part of it. This again will move downstream to Millennium Resources, and there they'll separate for the OEMs what product
What does OEM mean?
Original Equipment Manufacturer.
Okay. All these acronyms and things that it's hard for the layman like me to remember. But you said it's good to separate the glass here because it's safer. You don't have as much breakage.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing that by having it segregated and by having everything in there needing to be treated as if you're handling glass, it has tremendously cut down on any breakage whatsoever. We've been very, very lucky in that we hardly have any breakage.
That's wonderful. As I look around outside on this, and it's really a nice day in the middle of April 2011, you're accessible. You've got a nice big parking lot here. It's easy to just slip in here, bring the stuff in, say hello, make a new friend, right?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Now, Calvin was talking a few minutes ago with us about what people can recycle. And I was thinking of that great show on television called, American Pickers, where they walk up to somebody and they hand them a list of what they take.
There
the guy
you go.
says, "I got a couple of those old motorcycle frames out back. How much you give me for that old Triumph there?" I love it. So
there is a New York compliant list.
Oh, there is?
There is. And you're holding it in your hand.
That's what it is. Well, first of all, his name is on top, Total Computer Supplies, but who would think about a cable or satellite receiver? That's the number one thing. What can you take out of those?
Well, out of those in particular, there's scrap metal as well as boards. And those boards are the brains. Again, we're talking about how your receiver works.
So you can save those?
Well, not necessarily save them, but they're one of those recyclable goods.
Yeah.
This poor lady, I wonder what she's got. Let's find out.
Okay. Yes, you got a little intake here.
Absolutely.
In the last couple of minutes, a wonderful lady came, said that's been sitting upstairs for years. It's about time, and
that's true. She dropped off a CRT monitor and a small home computer.
Yeah, and she was intent on finding out who you were and where you were.
I'm very happy that she cares.
So yeah, when I said a voyage of discovery, people are starting to discover you, Mr. J. Letts, and that's a good thing.
I think so.
For a lot of reasons, for you personally and for this whole recycling idea. And we have received a good education today. Now, we talked about the satellite receivers.
Sure, and of
we've
course
talked a lot
computers.
about computers
Yeah.
and printers, but commercial stuff too, right?
Well, yeah, we can take commercial printers. We can also take regular consumer printers. And so that's, one big thing that when, especially if you've ever bought a new computer and your old printer didn't work, that would be probably the most common scenario that almost everyone has gone through.
And people are trying now to replace their old printers with wireless printers now, right?
Absolutely, that's very, very popular.
Yeah.
Very
Right.
popular. And we, of course, recycle those when they go. So,
What are they going to do with us when we go? Are they going to recycle us?
on the list, there's also CRT monitors and CRT TVs.
Now, what does that mean?
Well, if you take a look behind here and you see that great big 52-inch monstrosity,
Oh my God, yes, Calvin.
that's considered a CRT because that's cathode ray tube television.
This technology, some of that technology in the early days of those big ones was really truly amazing, right?
I couldn't agree more.
Various liquids in there, and
The plasma TVs in particular,
yeah,
sure.
plasmas. And there's discussions today, which is better, the plasma or the other kind.
LED.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big thing, of course, is dot pixels, and as far as I know, they've already won. LED is the best technology we have for visual imagery.
Is it really?
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. If I can save enough money to buy one, I'll.
They are a little more expensive than the regular units.
Yeah. So what else have we got? You got consumer printers, CRT monitors and TVs, digital converter boxes.
Absolutely, DVD players.
And Calvin mentioned DVD players.
Absolutely.
They're so inexpensive in the store that you don't pay very often to get them repaired. You go and buy another one for almost nothing.
That's
they're
it.
they're meant that way, to be throwaways.
Well, I certainly think so.
Yeah.
I think that's why they're sold that cheap.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, the big money seems to be in the release of the films themselves. I mean, whether or not I go to a bargain basement bin and maybe get one for $10 a piece, but if I go out and buy a brand new edition or I buy a series of editions, I've seen some that were quite expensive.
It's amazing, that whole field. Wow. The whole field of communications has changed so much in the last 20 years. It boggles your mind, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, what else have we
Well,
got?
we're going to do fax machines.
Oh, yeah, fax machines.
Yep, flat panel monitors, flat screen TVs, those are the little newer ones that come out. Game consoles, your handheld audio and video devices, your iPods, your iPhones, your cell phones, anything that you might use to carry along to listen to music like a Walkman. Those things, when they die, it's the same thing. Don't send them to the landfill. Let's recycle them. Beyond that, notebooks, scanners. They say small servers, but what they mean are dedicated servers, and that can be any size. I don't discriminate. I do this for the state, federal, and local governments, as well as all citizens, all businesses. It's open to everybody.
That's wonderful. And VCRs.
Yep, VCRs. When they say wire, they're talking about any wire you might have that goes along with an electronic
Oh, I
device.
got drawers and drawers.
There you go.
And
And then
my-
zip drives, which very few people use anymore. You
Yeah.
might recall it was a big floppy.
Yeah.
Well, it's no longer in fashion, so it's not used. Some of the things that aren't on the list, we're looking at electric power tools. We're looking at batteries, which isn't on the list, but I've certainly mentioned batteries several times during this show. I would just have to say just about anything that is electric, like radios, things like that. We're more than happy to recycle them because they're part of what is going into that stream anyway. That material is very similar, whether or not it's 30 years old or, 2 years old.
You know, I got an interesting question in hearing you talk and all the computers and equipment you bring in. Do you collect anything? Are you a collector of any kind personally now?
I'd have to say no.
No, really? Isn't that amazing? I would have thought you started by collecting old.
Yeah, no, at one point I did. I had an early computer collection, I would say, because I had not only my original Tandy, but I also had my original Commodore 64. And actually, I've moved away from that. Not because I don't think there's any value in it, but it seems as though I'm too busy handling other stuff.
And you are. It was obvious by what we saw here today. Do you have any special plans for the rest of 2011 and 2012 that you might let us in on? Besides your delicatessen?
Well,
can't wait for that.
I would have to say, as far
More of
as
the same?
yeah, not only more of the same, but hopefully that everyone will be happy, healthy, and wise.
Yeah. And think recycling.
Absolutely.
Spread the word. We've talked about word of mouth advertising, how sometimes the expensive advertising just doesn't work for a place like this. You need people talking about it.
It certainly helps up here.
Around the supper table and the breakfast table. And what are you going to do with that old stuff in your office in there? You're not going to use that anymore. Take it down to Jay Letts.
There you go.
Yeah. Jay, I want to shake your hand and thank you so much for spending this time with us and for doing what you do. Because some people just go through life and other people do something that's worthwhile. And I think you're in that latter generation.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks
Bertie.
again, Jay, and have a lovely day.
I will.
I always tell our viewers that we appreciate their comments and suggestions. A good friend of mine mentioned that I should come down and meet Jay Letts, and look what it turned into. I got a new keyboard for my laptop, so I can actually put pauses between words now when I write something. But I also got an education that Calvin and I both do. I learned a lot of things here today. I've even learned how many bottles are not recycled in New York State. If you don't know the new law, learn the new law. Tell your friends about it, teach your kids about it, and grandma too. Maybe she's willing to learn something. And if you have some recyclables, any kind of electronic equipment, bring it to Total Computer Supply right here on Route 9 north of Plattsburgh. If you have other suggestions about people or places you'd like to have us go, please let Calvin know or let me know. We're easily accessible. If you got a check for $5,000, write it out and send it to Calvin, even if it's for a couple hundred, to perpetuate this program, because that's the only way we can keep it going. You know what gas is costing? I heard today in California it's like up to $4.29 in some stations. So send a generous check to Hometown Cable on the Ridge Road in Champlain. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.